everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back to the latest episode. Today it's just going to be me, and I want to talk about something that I have been a victim of, and I've seen it happen with several people, colleagues of mine, as well as people I've worked with. And it's about making sure you make your growth and your professional goals a priority. So let's talk about that because intuitively you're like, well, of course I'm a priority. But it's amazing what happens when you get into your cycle where you're going and you're meeting with your leader and you're talking about everything. You're talking about project updates, important metrics, and maybe the status of different things. You're probably discussing your team, what's going on dynamic wise, problem performers, high performers, what you're doing to grow, engage your team, because we all know engagement is a struggle across the board. I don't know any industry, I don't know any leader that isn't having some real conversations about engagement. So there's so much attention being placed on our teams that ironically, that we are not a part of that, right? So somehow along the line, all this time, all this energy, all your agenda items are about the work and not necessarily about you. And that's an incredibly, incredibly dangerous place to be. Because if you are not thinking about, talking about what it takes to keep you engaged, you growing, you thriving, then eventually you're going to burn out, plain and simple. You're going to start to question, what am I doing all this for if there's never an opportunity for you to feel like you're being rewarded and you are getting the growth that you want in the role that you're in. So I want to start with what's the first thing, because you're like, Kim, there's so much happening, yada, yada. Yes. But one thing you have to do is make sure you, leader, wannabe leader, are on the agenda. And I know right now we're in APE season and trying not to use too many letters, but if we're talking about annual performance reviews, this is a perfect time. So when you're sitting there, it's not just about what you've accomplished this year, but really getting very specific about what are your goals? How do you personally want to grow? Not just the business, right? Because that's always an important thing. How do you want to grow your team? How do you want to contribute to the organization? Because that's why you're there. Is because there's a business that needs to make money in order for you to continue to have a job. All those things are great. But so often I think it's an afterthought. And again, I'll own that I probably wasn't as good at this as I should have been. And I would get frustrated when I wasn't given the opportunities I thought I should have been. Well, guess what? If you are not clearly communicating what you want to do as a growth opportunity, what you want to do or who you may want to become as a professional, no one else is going to know. Like it's not like some magic thing where your boss suddenly knows who you want to become, how you want to develop, what areas would you like to improve in. If you're not telling people, they can't help you. No one is a mind reader. And just as we are all stressed in trying to manage our teams, our leaders are equally stressed. So if we're not putting it in front of them, making it easy for them to digest, understand, challenge, question, then make no assumptions. Okay. Make zero assumptions. They probably don't know. And for those of you who are sitting there and saying, well, I'm just so happy to have a job. Fair enough. The workplace is very volatile. We've seen so many different layoffs happen, and people who in a million years thought they would never be laid off are finding themselves in positions of having to now scramble to look for something else. I say to you, it's not like there's a couple different things you can think about here. So, for instance, when I say talk about your future, it doesn't always mean a promotion. So if you're in that position where you're like, I don't want to ask too much, Cool. But I still think it is very important that you remind the organization that you are there, you are invested, and you want to keep growing your skills personally and professionally in order to show up as your best self. You have to talk about your future. You have to put yourself on the agenda. Oh no, I'm saying that a couple of times now. It's intentional. So, for instance, say you're scared to ask for a promotion or say you want to go to the next level. That's fine. Then I would encourage you to think about what are the things that would help you grow and thrive in your current role. That is something you can talk about. So, again, when you're getting feedback, every single one of us has things that we excel in. We have things that we really don't excel in. And that's, I would have you look at both of those extremes and say, what is a strength that I can continue to grow? Because I think it's important that we don't just grow the areas where we maybe aren't great. And if you're a strengths-based organization, a strengths-based leader, you definitely want to say, okay, where is something I'm strong and how do I continue to develop that skill? And you can also pick something and say, man, I know I'm not as well versed, I'm not as well rounded here. How do I get better at this? So you can still talk about goals. You can still talk about professional aspirations without walking in and saying, I want a promotion next year. Part of your goals can just be, how do I get better in the role that I'm in? And I encourage people, particularly, if you are a year in your role and some organizations still have that idea that you don't promote, like you got to be in it for 3 to 5 years before you promote. This is a great way to have that conversation, is to focus on that. Again, you are still on the agenda. You are still talking about what it takes for you to be the most engaged, the most productive self. So it's really hard to argue against that. Secondly, I would encourage, so again, if that is one option for you. The second thing I would encourage you to think about is, say you've been in your role, you feel like either you're done with it, like you've gotten what you want out of this, maybe this isn't the best fit for you, or you just feel like you're stagnating. Again, you can walk in and say you want a promotion. I know a lot of companies are very weird about how they do and don't promote. So a second option you have is to consider a lateral. So, because a lot of skill sets are transferable. And I've done that at organizations where I had a role, I was doing something, I really enjoyed it. There were other opportunities. So there were elements of it that were a little outside of my sweet spot, but it allowed me the opportunity to move into a different team, a new task idea. So I was able to take the skills that easily transferred and then grow. I learned a bunch that helped me become not only a better leader, but a well-rounded employee. So I would encourage you to think about how lateral moves could be leveraged for professional development. I talk about this. I used to work for a Fortune 50 company about a decade ago, and they were really big on helping people move about a year and a half to 2 years. And one of the ways that they kept people engaged and growing was not always by going up, because it's not always possible to promote people. Truthfully, if we just promoted everybody every year, that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make any business sense. So, but if people really are in a place where they want development and they're invested in the business and the business is invested in them, laterals are a great way to expand your knowledge of the business while also keeping you in a position of fulfillment and engagement. And again, you can try different things. It's almost like you're trying things on. Like, this could end up being an avenue you didn't even know existed and is one you can thrive in. So I go back to the same thing. It keeps you on the agenda. It keeps you talking about how you can continue to grow and thrive, and bring value to the organization you serve. Because if you're not bringing value to your organization, they're not going to keep you. And quite frankly, given the recent everything that's happened, even if you do bring value, sometimes you don't stay. But in this conversation, at least for it comes down to you, I would love to get to a place where I never have another conversation with a leader who says, yeah, I had my one-on-one with my leader and it was really great, but we never got to talk about me. And why? Because she was on the bottom of the agenda. She was the last item, so they ran out of time. And so I would love to get to a place where we're not doing that. I think we have to, I believe we have to make ourselves a priority along with all the other priorities. Um, and I don't think it's necessarily gender based, but I do hear this a lot from women. And it reminds me so much about how women carry so much more of the emotional burden of things. So if this analogy serves you, take it. You need to put your oxygen mask on first with relation to development. Because if you are not growing, if you are not thriving, you are not going to be the best version of yourself before long. Because what's going to happen is you're going to start to get resentful that everybody else is growing and thriving, but you aren't. You're somehow just stuck in the same place. And I go back to part of that is on us individually as leaders to ensure that we are advocating for ourselves, for what we want, who we want to be, where we want to grow. Okay. So I encourage you, if this is speaking to you in some way, shape, or form, take some time, figure out what do you want to do? And then make sure you're not at the bottom of the agenda. Like if you're putting it on the agenda and you're still not getting to it, move it up. And tell your leader if you get pushback, say, this is really important to me. Like we've tried to talk about this now for how many meetings, how many months, and it hasn't happened. I want to make sure we have this conversation. It's very important to me. You have to make it a priority. You have to make you a priority. So with that, I just want to leave you again with life is hard, so be kind on yourself. I don't want to come across as judgmental, but I know this from personal experience. When you don't own your own your shit, you got to own who you are. You got to own your development, and you have to be able to say, I am just as important as everything else on this agenda. You have to. And you have to advocate for yourself because people are just not mind readers. There's just too much stuff happening for us to assume people know what we want next in our professional journey. Okay. So with that, I hope you are well. Please remember to subscribe, rate the podcast. Please share it with people if possible. And you can, if you're listening to this, you can also go see it on YouTube. I would love to see you over in that platform as well. Alrighty, y'all. Until next time.